Yeah, my circuit breaker trip. Now I was trying to say my Steam is offline, bro. Downloads are disabled because Steam is on offline mode. It was literally downloading with my circuit breaker trip, bro. Literally. That shit talking about my offline mode. Like, what are you talking about, bro? My Steam is tripping, bro. It's not letting me go online. Trying to fix this, bro. My Steam is tripping. Got a goddamn password. Um, yeah, I forgot the password. Dang. Shit, let me see this. I did it too many times, bro. I shouldn't be going through this, bro. I really shouldn't. Yes, sir. Did that work? Something went wrong while attempting to sign you in. Please try again later. Dude, these niggas tripping, bruh. Oh, these niggas tripping, bruh. Like, what in the world, man? Let me in. $30? 30 minutes, bro. Bruh. Like, see, it's that shit, bro. It's that shit I'm talking about, bro. It's like the world just don't want me to play it, bro. The universe just don't want me to play it, bro. Let me log in, bro. So inconvenient, bro. So inconvenient. I'm thinking about just going offline and come back on in 30 minutes so I can pay the shit. Cause like, bro, like, that motherfucker tripping, bro. Shouldn't have VPN or something. Something, bro. it gonna let me run this house? Hello. Let me see something. Sign in, big dog. I can't even play a game until Steam. I'm gonna go buy some more water. Woo!
These guys spent $20,000 on a really huge drone to do something totally worth it. As this guy grabs higher to get into perfect position, and now that he's above the pond, he lets go. Do you think this was worth $20,000? These guys spent $20,000 on a really huge... Then the drone goes up a little bit higher to get into perfect position, and now that he's above the pond, he lets go. Do you think this
Nigga.
is worth it? As this guy grabs onto the drone, it takes off and heads towards the water.
What the fuck on, bro? That shit's stupid. When Steam will decide to allow me to fuck on. Bro, that motherfucker tripping, bro. I'm about to get pissed. It's not the full version. Man. What's good with you, bro? I should be playing this by now, bro, but like, my power went out, I turned my power back on, and now my Steam is not letting me log into my computer, bro. Or the computer, or yeah, Steam's not allowing me to log into Steam on my computer, bro. Man, and then my power went out right before it was done downloading, bro. Like right before. It's like, I'm telling you, somebody just don't want me to play the game. The universe just doesn't want me to play this shit, bro. This is wild, bro. I swear it's wild. This is ridiculous, bro. Oh my god.
We'll guide you through how to fix.
I don't got a VPN, bro. I need a VPN.
Fix number for all Steam-related processes. Fix number 3, log out then log back. Restarted. Make sure that you log has already.
It's not letting me log in, bro. Let me log in, bro, please. Okay. Alright, bro. So something gonna have to give. I'm about to turn my PC off, turn it back on. Something, bro. But this some bullshit. You know what? We'll chill. We'll just watch something in the meantime. We'll just watch something in the meantime, bro. I'm trying to play some Starfield a bit. Hey, what I'm trying to do, bro. It says I gotta give it 20 to 30 minutes. It's been 10, so I guess that's 15 more minutes technically until I'm able to log in, bro. And then hopefully it goes smooth. But I should have been in the game by now, bro. My power didn't go out. Like, man, I can't with this shit, bro. I really can't.
Yeah, look at you. Help! Help! Snap out of it.
I can't. I simply can't.
It's over. Victory is mine.
Whoever made this sport just, I don't know, right? I ain't gonna speak on them.
They should have never let me find these power slap videos. Zygomatic bones will continue to be cracked.
Are you okay? Honey, are you okay?
I hope so.
Yeah, that wasn't really the backpedal I expected.
No backpedaling.
That damn discount Twitch streamer in the face done stepped forward while slapping. That's a violation. Deduct a point. There also appeared to be a clubbing blow on his slap attempt as well.
Is a no good, lousy son of a bitch. That's exactly what he is.
Payback's a bitch.
Down goes pink hair. For a second, he got into missionary. Look at his feet, look at his feet. Brother looked like he's struggling to learn the bachata. It's all over. That's what you get, cause you...
This sport is so stupid.
In retaliation, he'd receive a CVS length-powered receipt. Look at his body descending into the
Fuck, I would never let a man slap me, bro. I'm sorry, bro. It's just not happening. It's not going.
He slapped the soul out that man. Get the defibrillator. Matter of fact, get that brother.
Is this Dana's company, bro?
A heart trans. He slapped.
Or is this not even? Is this even a part of this? Or maybe this was. I don't know.
Wait a minute. He slapped the soul out that man. Into the abyss.
It's my turn. Holy fucking shit.
Wait a minute. He slapped the soul out that man.
Like, I'll participate in the octagon with professional before I let a man slap me, bro, as hard as he can.
Upper lip. Ride that surf. Looking like a wave that transmogrified into a riptide. Peep his nose, looking like it just got an erection. Don't forget about his earlobe. Looks like an enlarged clitoris. But above all else, keep your eye on his cheek. You can't tell me at the conclusion of the contact his zygomatic bone is not cracked. Left side of his face looked like a deflated BBL. Forget cosmetic surgery. Man's had to call in James Charles just to get his face ready for a family photo. Just make sure it's not his teenage son that reaches out. Oh, wait, I forgot. You can't talk about that on YouTube.
This game's winner is...
This man...
This world shall know pain.
He's fucked up.
Game over, man.
The CTE already began. Homie think he holding on to his infant child. Man's threw a slap that looked like a punch. Look at his eyes. They keep rolling, rolling, rolling back like the Undertaker.
Rest in peace.
Looking like he cannonballing straight into the afterlife. Hey, look, the cinnamon stick from Applejack's is back.
As you can see, I am not dead.
They sewed his lips back together, but his jaw still taking max damage.
Bomboclad.
But them boss like your bumper ass. Real bad man in the blood clot. You understand, eh? Top G of the Ross clot thing. Is it that? Fuck you, bitch.
Oh my god.
Good God, every time I see this man here on his back, I'm starting to feel like I'm on the wrong website. Look at the footwork, Badman. But despite being put on his ass twice, his opposition committed 2 fouls in back-to-back rounds, resulting in a victory.
Top G of the Ross clot.
I could not let a man slap me as hard as he can, bro. It's just not going,
Slap
bro.
like that brother looking like a febile old man caught on a windy night in Chicago.
Do you want to continue or not?
No, please, 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 no.
Homie got slapped so
But then it's
hard,
like, if I get slapped once,
he swallowed
I can't not get my slap. I can't not get my get back, bro. I'll be damned if I get knocked out. I'm gonna have to get a get back. I'm gonna have to slap that nigga back, bro.
I'll make it out.
Hey, bro, we not.
Hey, what? What happened happened to John F. Kennedy? Back and to the left.
Going down!
Had that brother walking around looking inebriated like he had the finest whiskey. Look at his nose wiggling. Look at that jiggle. Some nice bubble action right there. I know that impact was lethal. No way he didn't leave this match without whiplash.
So much pain!
Hiya!
Mans received a violation for stepping, but did it even matter if your opponent didn't survive? Almost slapped the facial hair off that man. Look at him, lifeless on the ground.
Oh, fucking do it again.
Homie slapped the ancestry out that boy. He's now become a man without a home. And now, it's time for the Kumite.
The Kumite? Did you say Kumite? Uh-huh. The Kumite.
What's a kumite?
Holy fucking shit.
Sidebar, don't Dana White look like a brother who always got diarrhea? You can't tell me he don't got Pepto on tap.
Boy, I gotta take a shit.
Chris Thomas did not need to slap the life out that man. Robert Frost once wrote The Road Not Taken. Evidently, Waylon Frost took the wrong path.
This Undertaker music better not get me copyrighted.
Dealing with an everlasting phone call that can't be answered.
Do you hear that? Hear what?
A ring! A ring!
His cheek nearly exploded through his epidermis. His chin has got to be fractured. His head almost made contact with his knee on the way down. Look at his head dribbling off the pavement. Rumor has it he received a cease and desist letter from Spalding while recovering in the hospital. I don't think he's gonna make it.
See, why doesn't it always do this shit,
But
bro?
if the doctors have hopes,
It don't always do this.
got a goddamn EMT.
Finish him!
Snake, are you okay? Snake? Snake?
In all seriousness, how is this a sport? Our bloodlust is getting ridiculous. Might as well bring back the Coliseum. Shit, now that I think about it, I'm no better. I'd probably do commentary on that too. You mean to tell me you watched the entire video but you haven't subscribed? Hit the subscribe button and become a member on Patreon or on YouTube to get access to the Discord. We're waiting for you in the Shadow Realm.
Do it! Just do it! Make your dreams come true!
Please!
Amen.
Please!
What are you waiting for, huh?
Oh my god.
What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you my review after 100% for Starfield. Just a day before its release, courtesy of a review copy provided by Bethesda, just a little bit shy of about 2 weeks ago, which was enough for me to put about 120 or so hours into it to bring you this review. To get my usual stuff out of the way real quick, I review games after 100% all the time to set me apart from other reviewers on the platform, and while that does include the achievements, it also includes a lot more than that. There's a video explaining what I cover down in the description below, and my Steam profile is public as well. With that in mind, in the case of 100% for Starfield in particular, while I have very much so touched all of, I would say, the handcrafted content, so to speak, it is a game that is host to a lot of procedurally generated content, which we'll discuss over the course of this review, that spans across roughly 1,000 planets. However, we'll get to that a little bit later. Before we start diving into the rest of this video, though, I do want to mention here at the beginning, I will be trying to avoid any major spoilers, things like the main story, of course, as well as certain side things like individual faction quests, but because this is releasing before the early access period for the game has even started, there might be some contextual stuff in the footage that could be considered a spoiler, as what I consider one versus what someone else considers a spoiler might be a little bit different. So with that in mind, you may just want to listen to this review if that is a concern for you. First up, however, we have an overview of this game. As I'm sure basically everyone is aware, though, Starfield is the first new IP from Bethesda in 25 years, and at its core, it is an RPG that centers and focuses on exploration in space. And while it does absolutely have a lot of hallmarks of what make a Bethesda game, it also adds and refines some interesting systems along the way that I think make it incredibly unique. Because while we have the typical, I would say, gameplay loop of faction quests, combat, perks, skills, that kind of thing that you would expect from Bethesda really at this point. They also, at the same time, I think made an effort to try quite a few new things as well. Before we get into all of that, I do want to make a note on the technical state of the game right here towards the beginning. As many people have been curious how buggy this particular game might be, as previous Bethesda releases have been known to be quite buggy. So a few notes on this. For starters, I played this game on a very high-end PC. This was not an Xbox excursion for me, as this is a PC channel. So I played this on PC, the Steam version specifically. And with that in mind, as this is my job, I have a very high-end PC, about as good as it gets on the consumer level. So I can't really speak to how this game is going to perform on more mid-range systems, but in any event, the game was remarkably smooth for me. I ran into a couple of small bugs, which we'll talk about, but this is easily the least buggy Bethesda title I have ever played. In fact, I have Skyrim and Fallout 4 on my computer right now, and I could fire those up and encounter more bugs than I've encountered here. The ones I did encounter were focused around NPC movement, and the two that I encountered came up pretty, I would say, infrequently. The most common one, though, was seeing NPCs either float off into the distance or sink into the ground, and either reloading a save or just walking out of an area and then back into it would fix this, so it never really hindered my gameplay in any way. But another common problem that popped up was that sometimes when enemies and the like would go to use their boost pack, which is like a jetpack of sorts, or when they would just try to jump over something, sometimes it wouldn't work and they would just kind of hang in the air and bug out a little bit. And that was pretty much the extent of the bugs I ran into personally. Beyond that, the game crashed on me one time in about 120 hours, which just wasn't a big deal to me. So while I did encounter some stuff, none of it was game breaking, and again, easily the least buggy Bethesda game I've ever played. From there, however, let's talk about the story setup of Starfield. Again, we're not going to go too deep into spoilers. We're basically just going to talk about the setup for the story, some vague details about it, as well as my general thoughts on it. Nonetheless, if you don't even want that information, potentially skip ahead on the video, it should be timestamped. As for the story, regardless of the character we make, which we'll get to in a moment, we start the game as someone who was recently hired by a mine of later. Let's talk about progression systems. There's a few here, honestly, but the, I would say, major ones are leveling up and your skills. This game does use a basic experience system, which is to say when we kill enemies, complete quests, etc., we will be earning experience, which will then level us up. On every level up, we are granted a skill point. We can then put these points into our skills, of course, which then leads to the other forms of indirect progression, such as modding your weapons, modding your equipment, researching new types of buildings to make that kind of thing. Skills themselves, however, are divided up into 5 subcategories: physical, social, combat, tech, and science. Many of these have, of course, a more focused grouping, if you will, but chances are you'll want a little bit of each one, as most everyone's going to want a little bit of combat skill. However, while you can pick up new skills simply by acquiring them with your first skill point, going farther than that takes a little bit more effort, because as you can see, each of those 5 subcategories is divided up into 4 tiers of skills. The lower tiers require an increasing investment into that particular grouping of skills, which is pretty straightforward. Basically, if you want to be really great at combat, you've got to put points into that tree to get down to the bottom of it and get the best stuff. Each individual skill is not able to be progressed simply by pumping it full of skill points. Every time you unlock a skill, in order to unlock the next rank, of which there are 4 maximum, you have to complete a challenge for each tier. That typically relates to the skill in some way, as you might imagine. So leveling up and skill progression is an interesting blend of simply gaining more experience and putting skill points into things, but also leveling by doing, as you have to engage with those skills to get the best versions of them. Now, on the skills specifically, many of them can just be percent increases to things like damage. However, the 4th rank of a skill almost always grants something special on top of the normal effect. For instance, if you pump up your laser weapon skill, the 4th rank gives you a chance to set things on fire if you hit them with laser weapons. If you max out the boost pack skill, you have the chance to knock enemies down and set them on fire when you boost in combat next to them. So in addition to the regular percentage increases, they did add some fun things to the individual skills if you put enough of an investment into them, which I think helps specialize your character, because between all the skills you can see on screen, the ranks that you can put into them, in order to become a true truly jack-of-all-trades character, you've got to start hitting like above level 100, which means throughout most of the game, you're going to have to specialize in something, which I think helps people find their way naturally into individual playstyles, like say a melee build, or someone who's trying to talk their way through enemies, someone who wants to use the boost pack or be really good at spaceship combat as part of the science tree, for instance. So I think they did a really good job with the skills. However, it is worth mentioning that some of the initial skills I think are almost mandatory pickups, because you cannot use a boost pack at all until you take a point in the boost pack skill, and being able to traverse planets with a boost pack in the absence of vehicles is really important. You have to take the lock picking skill, known as security for the digital locks in the game, as part of the tech tree in order to be able to lock pick anything above a novice lock. So it's important to understand what you can do without a skill and what you need the skill to do, such as in the case of stealth or sneaking around. You don't need the stealth skill to sneak. However, you do need the stealth skill to A, do it better of course, but also in order to see enemies' detection range. So if you want to know whether or not you're hidden or enemies have detected you, how close they are to detecting you, that is something getting the actual skill can help you out with, but you don't need it to sneak. Whereas if I want to pickpocket someone, I do need that. If I want to bribe a guard when I got caught stealing something, I need the skill to do that. So the game can be a little inconsistent in what requires a skill period and what having the skill just makes you better at, which I think is really the only point of contention I had with it, because otherwise I enjoyed it quite a bit. That said, as I mentioned, skills lead to other things, as getting points into skills is going to give you access to your sort of more indirect forms of progression, such as crafting and getting better upgrades. There is a research station on your ship, as well as throughout the game, that you can find, where you can spend the various materials that you're finding and gathering throughout the game to research various things that you can then craft, such as new ways to cook things, new ways to modify your weapons, etc. So when you get the appropriate skill for something, you'll usually then have to research that thing before you can actually start crafting for it. And that's how you do things like make modding weapons better and easier, or in some cases it just gives you access to buying better upgrades. For instance, if you want to build the best spaceships possible, you need to grab the skill that is going to allow you access to the best of the best spaceship modules that you can then buy from the spaceship vendor at major settlements, which we'll get into. But it doesn't even stop there, of course, because skills also grant us access to special dialogues relating to that skill, though this never seemed locked off by rank. Just one rank in any skill seemed to give you the dialogue option for it, and these can help out in a variety of situations. One that I found particularly useful was the medicine skill, as sometimes if I was dealing with a quest that required me to talk to a doctor who didn't want to help me with something, I could then use medicine to be like, well, I'm also a doctor, and then suddenly they would be much more helpful, that kind of thing. So some of the skills can provide alternatives to quests, even just through dialogue. Last but not least, on progression systems though, we have the skill magazines. They made a return. Throughout the world you can find skill magazines that will grant you useful benefits if you find them, such as increasing damage with specific weapon types, reducing fall damage, increasing carry capacity, just things like that. But moving on from there, let's talk a little bit about the game world and the mini systems it has going for it. So let's kick it off with the settled systems, as it were, where humanity has settled and made various cities and is generally just trying to survive out there in the universe. Early on into the game, once you reach the city of New Atlantis, there is a quest that will give you access to a history museum of sorts that will explain the recent history of the game. Honestly, I loved that museum because I think it does a fantastic job of quickly summing up a lot of the most important aspects of the world building as you get to grips with the rest of the world. But the long and short of it is, almost 200 years ago, from the time the game starts, I think like 180 if you want to get specific, we as a species realized that Earth's atmosphere was deteriorating and the planet would soon become uninhabitable, and we poured all our research into solving that problem before humans left Earth, before it became a barren wasteland, and settled out in the stars, which then became known as the settled systems. This gave rise to a few different factions, which we will talk about, each with their own major hub. I would say there are 3 primary large cities alongside a handful of minor settlements and things like that just scattered throughout all the systems we can explore. So the first city you're almost certainly going to go to is New Atlantis, because this is where the home of Constellation is, and it is the settlement of the United Colonies. They sort of led the charge in humans' departure from Earth and became the de facto leadership afterwards. However, not everyone liked the United Colonies, and as humans tend to do generally, split off and started doing their own thing, which is how we saw the rise of the Freestar Collective, which is a group of people living on the frontier of space, farming and getting by the best they can, while promoting a lifestyle that is a bit more free than the rather restrictive bureaucracy of the United Colonies. Then, of course, we have slightly more criminal elements, let's say. Sanctioned criminality, so to speak, gave rise to the city of Neon, which can sell you the drug Aurora, which is pretty much the only place it's legal, but Neon is almost the cyberpunk imagining of this world. It is a very bright and colorful place, as you might imagine from the name, and it feels much more futuristic than I would say pretty much anything else does. And these settlements, alongside your reputation with their factions and everything, that is to say how much work you did for them, can eventually give you access to things like player housing, the ability to decorate said houses, and just your general standing with that group of people overall. So how you interact with these people can give you access to various perks, things like that. So for instance, if you want to buy a house, this might be important to you. But I tell you all that to tell you a little bit about the main joinable factions of the game. I do want to start this section by mentioning, however, that this is not all of the factions of the game. These are just the ones you can join. There are a couple of others that relate to story and things like that that I don't really want to mention here, as I think they are best discovered for yourselves. But in terms of joinable factions, we have the United Colonies Vanguard, the Freestar Rangers, the Crimson Fleet, and Ryujin Industries. Each of these will expose you to a different way of thinking out here in the settled system, kind of introduce you to a lot of the world building, but each of these factions also represents a choice that will then potentially go on to have lasting effects on the world or universe outside of just that faction. For spoilers' sake, we won't go like full deep dive into these, but I did want to talk about them a little bit. The United Colonies Vanguard is really cool, as it is a military branch, so to speak, of the United a particular planet or local map. So just on the map level, we have the local map, that is to say the area we are actually in, whether that be a starship, a section of a planet, etc. And then we have the system map. This is the solar system that we are currently in. There's like 100 of these, which means there are a lot. And they wanted these to be grounded in reality somewhat, and as a result of that, we see all different types of stars. Some of them only have like one planet, some of them have tons of planets. We see moons, things like that, and basically just all the types of planets you would actually expect, because again, this game leans more heavily on science fiction than it does fantasy. So while we'll get to the ship stuff here in a moment, at this point I want to mention that you shouldn't be expecting to, say, land or walk on a gas giant planet, because that's not something you can actually do, even if we had the technology to do so, because it's not a solid surface for you to land on. And then up from the system map a layer, we have the galaxy map. This shows us all the stars we could potentially go to. However, going to them typically requires a ship that is capable of doing so, and while you'll get a spaceship pretty early on, what I mean in this regard is the ability to grav jump, as based on the capabilities of your ship, you can go a certain distance to other stars, other systems, and increasing your ability to do that is going to make it easier to get to other places. However, each of those individual systems has a suggested level associated with it, which gives you a rough idea of the level you should probably be before you try to mess around there, because that is the level that the encounters you may run into will be or spawn from. Though I will say after like level 30 or 40 and you get a solid build and equipment under you, you don't really have to worry about that too much anymore. Now on the system map, that is to say when you're looking at planets, you can scan them from your ship to get an idea of the resources and things they have, but also to highlight various landing areas. Because now I want to talk about the separation of space exploration and planet exploration. So space is sort of its own self-contained thing. You have a ship, you can fly it around, you can engage in space combat even, which we'll talk more about shortly, but in order to explore a planet, you have to sort of load into that planet, which requires landing on it. Again, each planet may or may not have predetermined landing points. However, those aren't the only places you can land. You can land most anywhere on a planet that is somewhere you could actually land, like, you know, not in the middle of an ocean, for instance. And then at that point, it will generate a surrounding landscape for you to explore if you just chose a random place. And this is how you can do things like build certain outposts, set up your own settlements, etc., or even set up those outposts to farm that particular place for a specific resource. This individual sort of local map will also generate areas of interest for you to explore, and based on the planet you're on, it will have certain wildlife, flora, fauna, things that it might spawn in with you. This is where the sort of procedural content comes up based on where you land. This area is not infinite, you can't just run forever. There is a boundary in the surrounding area that requires you to move your ship if you want to go farther, which basically means a landing somewhere else. I will say this is not personally a restriction that I care about, but do know that you can't just walk from one end to a planet to the other even if you wanted to, though as we'll get to, there's not really much of a reason to do that anyway. Because as I mentioned, there are a few predetermined landing spots on some planets, and while these are of course our more set locations like our major cities and their surrounding areas, major quest hubs, that kind of thing, other minor settlements, there's also a lot of, I would say, more generic places like science outposts, civilian outpost, fracking station, things like that. And while those are sort of predetermined areas that you can find just by scanning a planet, the problem with those is that if you start exploring system by system, you'll notice that these places are very, very similar. Many of them just have like the same structure with different contents. So if you see a science outpost, you know pretty much what it looks like after a certain point. And while it might have different enemies or different things going on, you do get to a point where you're like, all right, I've basically seen this. So while there is an absolute ton of handcrafted content, much of the procedural content, like landing at different points on a planet or just finding even the more generic outposts and things like that, it does come a point where there's a bit of diminishing return once you've played for so long. I will say, playing just through the handcrafted stuff, that I never really saw any repeats or anything like that until I deliberately started going exploring on my own, and even then it took a while. So when it comes to actually landing on and exploring various planets, while you can see some really cool stuff like some alien life forms in the form of alien animals really, and you can even find some unique locations, unless you want to build an outpost there or you are just deliberately looking for those scenic views, so to speak, there's really not much to be had from exploring the individual planets. And I don't think that's going to be for everyone, frankly. The scope of it is impressive nonetheless, as all of those things combined, everything I just mentioned in this section, really manages to really capture the feeling of exploring space, which was pretty remarkable. Lastly on that subject, however, though, as you might imagine, some of these planets are not exactly welcoming, let's say. They have hazards associated with them, extreme temperatures, extreme environments, and your resistance to those things is important, which is based on the spacesuit you have on, because otherwise you could start taking on harmful effects, diseases, injuries, all sorts of stuff that can then, in some cases, outright kill you, or at the very least hamper your progress, so to speak, which is an especially important thing to keep in mind when it comes to building your outposts. Outposts are pretty much what you would expect. You can build an outpost, it's very similar to settlement building in Fallout 4, or where you effectively build a settlement from the ground up, though it's worth a mention that the player housing in the actual cities also allows you to customize and decorate the housing in much the same way the settlement system works, but obviously with different things. For outposts, we can set up all sorts of things to allow us to harvest the resources of the planet we're on, and then we can use those resources to aid our research, which will allow us to build and construct more interesting things. If we pick up the right skills, we can even start building these outposts in more dangerous environments, allowing us to survive and take advantage of the resources of planets we might not otherwise inhabit. And what's crazy to me is that this system is completely optional. You don't need to engage with this at all. However, if you want that space exploration sim feeling, you can build up this network of outposts that are all sharing resources and
I'm trying to log back in that bit, bruh. Cause if it don't work this time, I hate to bust your bubbles. I'm gonna restart this PC. No cap. See, there's no reason it should be working now, bro, at this point. I just don't get why it's not working, bro. It doesn't even make any sense. Which one piece is that, bro?
Hey, I saw the way you fight. How did they even arrest you? They didn't. The pirate and my crew. I said that together we'd make a pretty good team.
Watch that. Let me try to log in one more again. Yeah, I'm about to turn my PC off, turn it back on, bro. I don't got time for the bullshit, bro.